Okay, as soon as I come in the barn, I make sure that I get my hands washed good there. There's a little dispenser on the wall and a sink that has good warm hot water there. So make sure I do that before I start in on the milking. So anyway, I'm going to just grab the pail, the milk bucket, and I like to just set it right there on the floor, about right there, and then I'll just take this hose, turn it a little bit on the hooks so I can lower the part that goes on the milk bucket, the pulsator. It's just a little rubberized seal that just pushes on there, and then it's about the right level for me to put these plugs in. There's 4 plugs. You need to make sure you get the plugs in each one of the cups, and that helps when you're milking the cow, so that, or when you're getting ready to put the milker on, that you're not losing suction as you're trying to get those cups on. Now there's a lever there. Make sure that that's turned off. Sometimes that's open, and if you turn the pump on, it won't build up suction. So that little lever needs to be in that position that you see it. So we'll head out into the milk parlor and get things set up to milk the cow. Here's the parlor, brightly lit barn, and they've done a beautiful job setting it up with a stall, and it's really nice to milk in. Let's see if I can get this camera set up here so that we got a good angle so you can see what's going on, help you with if you're new to milking and you need to kind of see what's going on. There's a little hook here. I just put the hook, put these hoses on that hook, and then that's a suction hose. I usually just bring that in over my neck like that, but works good for me. Then I put it on, hook it up on the nozzle there, and then there's another lever right there that has to be pulled down or open. Then there's a switch there, but I'm not going to turn it on yet until we're ready to milk the cow. Electrical switch that turns on the pump. Okay, I'll get a pail of grain. This is usually corn or grain that has molasses mixed in it that the cow really likes, and that gets her in the barn. She comes in. You don't usually have to go get her because she comes in by herself. When this grain's in there, she really looks forward to eating that. Now I've gone outside. There's a goat and a sheep that I gave a little bit of corn to out here. You can see there they are. Just put it in that little place there where they can eat. Sometimes those goats or sheep are there, or if they're not, you don't need to worry about that. So anyway, go over here and open the latch, and checking the other cow. There's actually 2 cows. One's a heifer that's getting ready to calve in a few months, so we also give her a little bit of grain. About a half a pail is what I give her, so gets her ready so that when she has her calf that she'll like the grain and hopefully come in as good as this other cow does. Now I get another bucket or little pail of grain. Greg likes us to feed her 2 pails worth, so I just have that sitting there, and we'll give that some more of that to her later on. Notice the little thing I just closed there. You got to close that little thing on her neck so that she doesn't back out while you're milking her. And it's a hot day, hot mornings, middle of the summer. Usually I'll just get a little water from the hose right here to wash her down, wash her up. In the winter you can go back inside the parlor. There's warm water. You can get warm water to do that. But where it's so hot, I just use this outside tap. Anyway, get her cleaned up good. Make sure that she's doesn't have any dirt on her teats. You want that as clean as possible. and you can see she's been laying down, and it's dry outside, so she's basically coming in really clean. Um, Here's a little disinfectant here that we put on her. It's a little cup that contains some disinfectant. You saw me dip her teats. I usually just put a little bit on the very ends. That helps her from getting mastitis. And then you want to get some dry cloths and wipe that off. You don't want to leave that on there when you put the milkers on. So that really helps her out to put a little bit of that on there and before you start milking. So usually it takes 3 or 4 minutes for her to give her milk down. You'll notice I'm just checking there. You can tell as the milk is starting to come down into her teats, it'll fill them up and they'll get a little nice and spongy and thick. You can tell I'm just checking my watch there. I like to give her at least a minute or two. You don't want to put the milkers on right after you wash her. It isn't going to work for you. You need to give her time to let her milk come down. All right, so we're getting ready to put the milker on. I'm going to give her about halfway through like this. She usually finishes up the first pail, so I'll finish up with the other pail of grain and we'll go ahead and get started with the milking. So you'll notice I just turned the switch on there, and that turns the pumps on, and grab the milker, and we are just about ready to get started. Here's a little hook here. I like to put the hose on to help with the weight of those hoses. They have a little bit of weight to them. All right, I like to hold this with my left hand, but you'll notice I took one of the plugs out, only one of them. I left the other plugs in, and then you bend that. It's a little tricky. It takes you a while to figure that out, but as I take the little plug out, I bend the cup, the little rubber cup, so it doesn't let air into it, and then quickly put it up onto the nipple, because if it sucks too much air, all the cups will come off and you'll have to start all over again, which is kind of a pain. Sometimes she'll put her leg forward and it'll be in the way, so I like to tap on it. You'll notice that a little earlier that I tapped on that leg just a little bit to have her move it back, and she's usually really good about doing that. Okay, so this cow's a little tricky. She has a couple of quarters that don't milk out really well. So I usually hold the bottom of the milker with my left hand, and I'll pull with a little more pressure on the cup than I do the other cups, especially the right front. The front quarter closest to me doesn't milk out very good, but all cows are a little different. Sometimes see, that just fell off of there. So, and if you're not careful, the whole thing will fall off. You don't catch it quick enough. So I was able to get it back on there quickly. But she's milking out now, and like I say, two or three of the quarters milk out quite fast. So I've worked with her, and we're just about ready here to. Usually it takes about 5 minutes. 4 or 5 minutes to milk her out. I cut some of the video out there of me milking, and you don't want to just sit there and watch that. But anyway, you notice I reached up there and turned that valve off and turned the switch off, the vacuum pump off, and I'll just hang that back there on the hook. And I just bring my 5-gallon bucket. A lot of people take the pail inside the parlor and use the strainer. I'll kind of show you that stuff when we get back in there. But this batch is just going to feed some chickens, so I mix it with the grain and whatnot when we get back home. The chickens love it, and they really lay eggs good with this being mixed with grain feed. So anyway, I'm not really worried about cleaning it really well, so I just pour it in the bucket. I came in and milked last night and got about a half a bucket, and this morning it about fills that bucket, about 4.5 gallons worth of milk right there. So anyway, I usually, as soon as I get home, I put this in the freezer for about 3 hours and super chill it quickly. That really keeps the milk from spoiling when I get it in a freezer. And just something to think about. You don't want to leave it in there, it'll freeze. Okay, now this is just some ointment that we put on her. It's like just a teat balm is what you call it. It helps keep her teats moist and from getting cracked and drying out. So we like to get her those teats coated, and it just really helps with the chapping or whatever on her teats. Alright, so I just pull that little lever back. There's a little thing you squeeze, and then that opens, and then you can pull that back. And usually she backs out just fine, and we'll head back outside. Sometimes she likes it. Greg keeps the hay in here and stuff, but sometimes she'll like to stay there and eat the hay. But then there's a little latch on the door. Make sure once she's out, get that latched. I've left it open a couple times, and the other cows come in and start eating the hay, so I have to remember to make sure I latch that before I go back into the parlor, or they'll come back in the barn. Right, these little plugs here, I usually just take those and throw them right in the pail, and I'll notice I'm pulling that. As I pull the hose off, you have to close that lever so that it's horizontal with the so it's vertical or whatever. It's just off. Make sure you push it up so that it's off, and if not, when you go to turn it on in the parlor here, it'll suck air in there, so just make sure that that's off. And get this camera up here so we can look down here. So as soon as I get in the parlor, and just set that basically right there on the floor where I started with it, and drape the milker into the sink here, and I plug this into the little nipple here, and then notice that lever, I just keep it off for right now, but when you turn the pump off, you want to turn that so that it's horizontal with the pipe, in line with the pipe. So little plug there that I put in the sink. Like to keep the water that we're using, so we're not wasting any water. Okay, so up here sometimes there's some milkers that like to strain their milk, so they there's a little strainer pad right here that fits inside these little strainers, and then they put that on their bucket and then pour the milk through the strainer into the bucket and to clean their milk. But I'm not worrying about that today. Like I say, I'm just pouring it straight in the bucket and taking it home and feeding it to my chickens on this round. I do use a lot of milk to make yogurt, but anyway, not today. This is a cream separator thing up here, and some people like to hook that all up and separate the milk. That's another process. You can go on to Google and see how a milk separator works, and I'm not sure what the brand name on that is. I think it's a European model. Okay, so put these. You saw that I got that bucket off the shelf there and put it in the sink. And I get a spoonful of this chlorine soap, pour it in there, and then turn on the hot water and kind of swish that around. Mix it up and fill that bucket full of hot water. We're getting it ready for the cleaning. So as soon as that bucket gets full, and sometimes while I'm waiting for it to get full, we'll start washing the hose down. This isn't too bad. Sometimes when she's in the barn, she'll poop there on the cement and it'll splatter all over the place. So today she was pretty clean. I usually don't have a problem with her doing that, or if she pees or whatever. But anyway, the bucket's about full, so once it's full, I go ahead and flip that switch right there and then turn that nozzle down, or vice versa. You can turn the nozzle down, then flip the switch, and now it's I don't know if you can see it in the video, but it's sucking the water out of the pail. And we'll wash those hoses down a little bit more while the water is being sucked into the pail. So doesn't take very long. Turn the switch back off, and I just lift those out and dump the little residual soap and stuff out of the bucket. And I don't like to let those cups touch anything because you don't want to get any bacteria on it. Alright, then you pull the lid, and then you can either just set that on the little tub there, or sometimes I just hang it on this little hook. I think over time I've just got to where it just sits on the little tub rather than mess with that little hook. And then I turn this and swish it around. This is all the chlorinated soap water that's in the bucket that disinfects it and kills all the bacteria. And then the little plugs that were in there, I just pour them into the tub. And then now we're going to do the rinse cycle. The rinse cycle is basically the same thing. You go ahead and while I was doing that, I guess I didn't realize I had the water on, so the bucket was already full. So I just turned the switch on, and now it's sucking the fresh, clean water into the tub, or into the milk tank. Then just kind of rinse the hoses, get them clean. All right, I've shut the pump off again, undo that hose. And then I like to just close it right there. Sometimes some milkers keep it open, but you just have to make sure when you go out into the milk parlor that that valve is shut, or you'll lose suction there. So I've got it shut off now, and that's a good place for me, or when the next milkers come in the morning to milk, that it's already turned off. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and get this good, nice, clean. It's hot, good, hot, clean water, and just swish that around, rinse it, and just set that in the tub and wash the outside of it. Nice and clean. The inside's been rinsed, and it's ready to just go ahead and hook up on the hook here. Okay, and then I just get ready to, after this has been rinsed, see that hole right there? You don't want water in there, so make sure you don't tip it upside down. You don't want water in the pulsator. So as you're rinsing that off, make sure everything's held down. That's the one critical thing about that, is that you don't want water going up into the pulsator. So after you rinse it, then I like to turn on a little water out of the spigot there, and then just take my hand and rinse everything out. I can turn it a little bit, but make sure you're not cupping it so that the water runs in there, or else it's going to cause big problems. Alright, so I'll just grab both ends of that and go ahead and put it up on here and hook it so that will hang and drip. Those hooks, I thought about maybe getting some different hooks, but they're okay. Then bring the little strap around and hold those, and then that just hangs there, and it allows the water to drip out of the hoses and to dry all out without having any puddles of water or anything. That's a good way to get things cleaned out. And then just set the bucket, rinse that bucket out, set that back up there. Now I take this little hose. This is a suction hose that we've been using. I like to run some water through that and clean it up, and then when it's done, just hang it up there. And then the last thing is to get the plugs cleaned. Get them rinsed off, and then just hang them up there. There's actually 2 sets of plugs. I'm not sure why there's another set of plugs there. I guess just in case you drop them outside, or when you're milking, instead of coming clear in and rinsing again, you can just grab a couple extra plugs. Sometimes that milker falls off. You got to start all over and use the plugs again. But okay, so that pretty much takes care of the cleanup and the washing of the equipment. I keep this little mop here. The floor's always got a little water on it, so we like to make sure we clean that up good and keep it looking nice. Keep everything as clean and as possible with the parlor. Okay, so we're going to head out here and wash things down. This is the last thing that I do. There's you know, in the milk, some milkers might want to do this stuff in a different stage. Some milkers come right in when they start milking. They put the cow in very first thing, and I've done that, and I actually like that better, where you just, as soon as you walk into the barn, instead of going in the parlor and get set up, you come in here and you let the cow in and give her a grain and wash her, and then while she's letting down her milk, you go in and get the bucket set up and come in, and then she's ready to milk as soon as you come in here and get set up. So you can do this in a little different order, whichever suits you. This just at least kind of shows you the 3 steps: the setting up, the milk area, and the cleanup. All right, that should do it.